turn it over to Mr. Ian.
Yeah, it's small stuff like that, you know, where it's,
What is stuff that's body water.
One second of my life, I'm worried about her coming. What's wrong? Both coming.
Freddie or Ian, can someone start recording the session?
It is recording.
Okay.
Pleasant good evening to everyone, and welcome to day 2 of our training sessions. And the first module is traveling. Yesterday, yes, we had some difficulties, and we'd like to apologize for that. But moving on to day 2, just a brief recap from yesterday, basically, as to what the rule or what traveling is. Next slide, Kendall. So what is traveling? Go again. And here, obviously, you're seeing some guys having to look at the monitor to determine a play at the end of a quarter, just to verify whether or not the person traveled or they didn't travel in making a basket. All right, for the purpose of this training this evening, please make a mental note of this symbols and definitions, because throughout the presentation, you will see a lot of symbols like these, and these will help us to get a better understanding of what it is we're trying to show, so that all of us can be basically on the same page as we go along through the session. All right, so this here, first and foremost, we have on the first line, you have 1 foot with a ball on it. This basically means player controls the ball, foot on the floor, or the second one, both feet on the floor. The black foot, stationary foot on the floor. The gray, foot in the air. The green with 1 S says first step, touching the floor. The orange or the brown, second step, touching the floor. And the ball by itself controls the ball in the air. And the circle with the red line is with nothing in it, relates to the pivot foot. Okay, so onward we go. All right, basically remember the definition of traveling. Traveling is the illegal movement of 1 foot or both feet beyond the limits outlined in this article in any direction while holding a live ball on the playing court. And 2, a pivot is the legal movement in which a player who is holding a live ball on the playing court steps once or more than once in any direction with the same foot while the other foot, called the pivot foot, is kept at its point of contact with the floor. And it goes on to give what the rule is. 25-1, establishing a pivot foot by a player who catches a live ball on the playing court. Basically, the bullet 1, a player who catches a ball while standing with both feet on the floor. The moment one foot is lifted, the other foot becomes the pivot foot. To start a dribble, the pivot foot may not be lifted before the ball is released from the hand or hands. And third, to pass or shoot for a field goal, the player may jump off the pivot foot, but neither foot may be returned to the floor until the ball is released from the hand or the hands. All right, so here we go. So this will demonstrate basically what we just read about stationary. So while standing with both feet on the floor, the player catches the ball with both feet on the floor, which is the first area. So once he catches the ball stationary, both feet on the floor, he has an option whether to pivot with the left or with the right. So the choice is his. Or, which is basically what it's saying here. So either he pivots with the left or the right. Go ahead. Next. Now, a player who catches a live ball, if both feet are off the floor and the player lands on both feet simultaneously. So, ball passes to the player. He lands both feet. Once one foot is lifted off the floor, the next foot becomes the pivot. So here, there's a lot of.
Can you please mute your mic?
Mute your mic. Mute your mic.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Ogaro.
Can I continue?
Continue.
All right. So the moment one foot is lifted, the other foot becomes the pivot foot. So this is basically what this is saying here. So both feet, the player lands with both feet on the floor. Once he lifts one of the foot, and in this case, he lifts his left, the right foot now becomes the pivot foot. And he is now able to move the non-pivot foot in any direction, backward, forward, left, or right. Next. Okay, now while standing, again, pass is made to the player. And to pass or shoot for a field goal, the player may jump off a pivot foot, but neither foot may return to the floor before the ball is released from the hands. So here in the slide, you see, player receives the ball, both feet stationary on the floor, both feet on the floor. The right foot now becomes the pivot. And now the player is going to jump. He may jump off of the pivot for a shot or to pass. However, noted in the diagram, you see the numbers 1 and 2. Now 1 means, okay, once he jumps, it's for him now to either pass or to shoot. bearing in mind that he cannot return to the floor with the ball in hand. If he returns to the floor with ball in hand, then it constitutes a violation and it's a travel. So he must release the ball on the jump for either to shoot or to pass. Next. Again, while standing. And this is basically opposite of what we just saw, where the player receives the ball in a stationary position, where both feet are stationary. He uses his pivot. He makes a jump off the pivot, but he returns to the floor with the ball in hand. Now, this would then constitute a travel. And as it says here, to pass or shoot for a field goal, the player may jump off the pivot, but neither may be returned to the floor before the ball is released. And here, as you see, the ball is still in the hands after he jumped and returned to the floor. Hence, it's illegal, and then that's a travel. Next. Okay. Are there any questions so far?
No questions coming in at this end as yet.
Okay. Now we move on to start a dribble from a stationary position, which means player is not moving, but both feet are on the floor. Now it's legal. So to start a dribble, the pivot foot may not be lifted before the ball is released from the hands. So remembering the symbols and definitions from the slide earlier, we see the pivot is circled here with the red circle, which means the pivot here is the left foot. Now, this player cannot lift that pivot foot before the ball is released from the hand. If the player lifts that pivot foot before the ball is released from the hand, then that would constitute a travel. Hence, traveling should be called. In this instance, pivot, foot is on the floor, ball is released from the hand before pivot lifts, hence legal. If the opposite occurs, then it's a travel. And as was just stated, this is the opposite, where pivot is the left, ball is not released from the hand before the pivot foot lifts from the floor. Hence, we have a travel. So we have an example here, and it's going to be shown here. Now, it says to start a dribble stationary, which is what we just mentioned. So here you have yellow 10 receiving the ball with both feet on the floor, which means she's stationary. In the second pick, her right foot leaves the floor, which now makes her left foot the pivot foot. But ball is still in hand. In the third pick, we see that the pivot foot is lifted from the floor. However, the ball still remains in the player's hand. Hence, that is an illegal movement. It's a violation, it's a travel. If it was the other way where the ball was released from the hand before the pivot foot lifts from the floor, it would have been legal, no travel. And it says at the top, basically the image below, the image demonstrates an illegal start of a dribble when stationary because the ball was still in hand while the pivot foot leaves the playing court. We move on to progression. The rules state a player who catches the ball while he is progressing or upon completion of a dribble may take 2 steps in coming to a stop, passing or shooting the ball. If, after receiving the ball, a player shall release the ball to start his dribble before his second step. The first step occurs when 1 foot or both feet touch the floor after gaining control of the ball. The second step occurs after the first step, when the other foot touches the floor or both feet touch the floor simultaneously.
Yeah. Why?
If the
Could you mute your mic, please?
Which are the
If the player comes to a stop on his first step, has both feet on the floor, or they touch the floor simultaneously, he may pivot using either foot as his pivot foot. If he then jumps with both feet, no foot may return to the floor before the ball is released from the hands. That's basically the rules. We're going to see some examples of each of this in the next slides to come. Next. If a player, okay, so the principle, so basically this is basically the principle of what we wore before, the old rule, which is the gray, and the new rule now, which is the green. In the old rule, basically, while gaining control of the ball, the pivot, you basically had to remain the pivot, and you were not allowed to take a step, more than 1 step after gaining control. However, after gaining control, in the new rule, you're able to change. Now we're about to start the dribble from stationary. So let us be mindful. We're going to using a term 0 step is not in the rules. All right, let us be careful of that. It's not in the rule, but it's only for the sake of clarity in training our referees.
So this is, just to add in, this is from a stationary position. So there's no 0 step receiving the ball from a stationary position.
All right, so here in the slide, it has 0. And 0 basically is when control of the ball, or as the NBA say, gather. Once you gather the ball, that first step in gathering is your 0. Then the 1 is when your next foot touches the floor after control of the ball, which here you see it's green. So in the first, his pivot, which was the red, was his right. His one is now his left, which is now the green. And two, the next foot touches the floor after the first step, which is now the right again, which is now circled with a yellow. So basically, once you gather from a stationary position, when you gather and depending on which foot is on the floor on the gather or on the control of the live ball, your next step would be with the other foot, and that constitutes the first step. And the second step would be with the opposite foot. If, however, you do not do any of this and you do contrary to it, then that would be a travel.
We have a question.
Uh-huh.
The question asks, how long after the second step must a pass be made?
Well, it would be dependent on a few things. One, the number of time on the shot clock. And if you're a closely guarded player, the time it takes to release the ball being closely guarded.
And question here, can a player slide his pivot foot before dribbling?
I will let Ian answer that one, because that was one we had today.
No, there's a term called in a field for the game, but the rule states if you move your foot before releasing, or that before releasing the ball, it is. Now, there is a principle in basketball called advantage, disadvantage. So you've got to look at the advantage, disadvantage. Did the player get an advantage from this slide? However, it is still, and I would call it straight up, it is still traveling.
All right, thank you, Ian, for that. And that's basically the answer to it. If a player slides his foot, it's travel. Yes, advantage, disadvantage, however, it is a travel, but sometimes, as Ian said, the feel for the game, and if whether or not that slide gave that player a greater advantage and place his opponent at a disadvantage by that slide in his pivot. Because who knows, maybe that slide may allow him to create a more open space or open look to either pass or shoot.
I'm going to ask you again to please mute your mic.
Next. Next. Okay, so progression. Now this basically, we're going to go through when catching the ball while progression or upon completion of a dribble. Now in the first part of the slide, we have first action, 0 step. Now this is when a player is in motion and receives the ball on a pass. In the top part of first action, you have a gray foot and a black with the orange ball. Now, remembering what our symbols and definitions were from the early slide, the gray basically means the foot in the air. So which means now the player gather the ball with one foot on the floor, in this case, his right foot. His next step would be the other foot, which is the left, which is first step. And his second step would be his right, which is the two step. So basically what it's saying, okay, you're in motion, you gather the ball, and on gathering the ball, your left foot is in the air, but your right foot is on the ground. Then your next step, but now this would now be called a 0. Your next step would be with your left, that's the 1. And the next step would be the 2, which would be with the right. So that would be legal in the new rule. In the old rule, that was not the case. In the lower part of the slide, a player gains control of the ball with both feet on the floor, right? Now, he can move whether it...
Can you please mute your mic?
Let's do this.
In the lower part of the slide, the player receives or gains control of the live ball with both feet on the floor. Now his first step can be with either foot, left or right. In this case, he chooses his right for his first step, and his second step must be with his left. And once that happens, it's legal. Now, even in the verbiage, it says, in the first part, basically gaining control of the ball. And then the next, the general principle, okay, the first step occurs when one foot or both feet touch the floor after gaining control of the ball. And the second step occurs after the first step, when the other foot touches the floor, or both feet touch the floor simultaneously.
Can I have a question?
Please send your question via the chat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And please to mute your mic, everyone.
Yeah.
One word incorrect. Man on the rule, not in. Morgan, back to you. Ken's planning for 400. Okay, here's what you have to realize.
Mute your mic, oh my goodness, people. Not you, boy. It's me and these people. Every night, mute your mic, mute your mic, mute your mic.
Got it.
Hey.
All right, next slide. All right. Again, in progression, gaining control of the ball with one foot stationary, one foot on the floor, one foot in the air. The gray represents foot in the air. Then your first action is now, and it clearly it shows it here. This is basically in conjunction with the previous slide, where it shows, okay, you gain control with one foot on the floor, and it then shows you exactly how that would look. So, gain control, one foot on the floor, which is the right. The next symbol then shows how that would look, where the left foot is off the floor, ball in hand. And the lower part, same thing, both feet on the floor, and that's how it basically would be. And then You would then make your first step and then your second step where necessary. So this is basically how it looks on the floor. Next. So this now represents now when a player gains control of the live ball while he's airborne. Now remember, based on the symbology, the ball by itself represents the ball is in the air, or he controls the ball in the air. And the next action basically shows how that will look basically once play is taking place. Play in the air, catches the ball, he gains control. Now, as it says here, gains possession, both feet in the air. Once he lands, the first step is a 0, whether both feet or 1 foot. In this case, it's 1 foot. Now the ball must leave the hand before the second foot touches the floor. So if in gaining position in the air, he lands on his right foot, before he steps with that left foot, he must release that ball from his hand, or that will be a travel. Because gaining position in the air basically would represent 0. So you gain possession of the ball in the air, that's 0. When you land, that first step is 1. And before you place that other foot on the floor, you need to release that ball. If you don't, and you step before releasing the ball, that would be a travel. Is there any confusion with that, or someone needs more clarification in regards to that? Okay, next. Okay, what? Okay, go back. Okay, go back to the next one. When you say clarification, what? Okay, ball is passed in the air to a player who catches the ball in the air. Once he gains control of that live ball, that basically is 0. Whether he's in the air or on the floor, that is basically the 0 in the steps, right? He lands on the floor with his right foot. That now becomes so the fourth step is basically the 0 once he lands. But before that second foot goes down, he needs to release the ball.
Can you mute your mic, please? So I gather you to say, Mr. Young, is that right foot comes, I start off airborne. That right foot comes in contact with the ground. I've got my 0 step. And the window of opportunity for me to pass, shoot, must happen before the other foot comes in contact with the ground.
That's correct.
So a question here. So after catching a ball in the air, the player can't pivot. So I guess they're asking if a player can pivot after catching the ball in the air.
Once that player lands, that foot that lands basically, that would then become the pivot. But then he has to land first. Once he lands, that first step becomes that.
Go ahead.
Kendall, the presentation gone. Where your screen gone? My co-instructor seemed to have lost the screen. I'm not seeing it. Are you guys seeing the screen? Is anyone seeing it?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. Okay. I don't know what happened to Kendall.
Okay. Question. Okay. You go ahead. Question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Ask a question.
This was answered. The person asked the same question as the previous person.
Okay. Look like my colleague, something happened to him.
The power outage in the Virgin Islands.
Oh, okay. So
that's the luxury you have. The luxury we have of living on an island, eh?
Sorry, guys, we don't have any current right now.
Yes, my colleague from Gilbert.
We apologize. We don't have any current right now. Even though we're living in a different part of the island, I don't have any current also.
Wait. So Ian, Kendall, are you able to restart the presentation?
Yeah, I could restart trying to share my screen now.
Okay.
But it's asking me to record, not to share. Oh. Can you see it? Can you guys see it?
Yeah. Are you able to do it as a slideshow?
No.
All right. Okay. I will do it from my end.
Okay. All right.
Please mute your mics.
All right, so we're gonna move to the next. Can I continue now?
Yes.
All right. Starting a dribble while moving. All right, in the first part, the first action basically, again, it's 0. Again, gaining control of the ball either with one foot on the ground or both feet. Then if you gain control with the right, all right, the player lands with 1 foot first, he may only pivot using that foot, which is now his first step, which is the green. Now, before he makes that third action or second step, he needs to release the ball. Whether or not he landed with both, whether or not he gained control with both feet or with 1 foot. The first step occurs when 1 foot or both feet touch the floor after gaining control of the ball. But before he makes that second step, he needs to release the ball. If he does not release the ball, then that player would have traveled. So again, it says the second step occurs after the first step, when the other foot touches the floor or both feet touch the floor simultaneously. Now this is starting a dribble while you're moving. So basically you're moving, you get a pass, and whether it's 1 foot on the floor or 2, that's basically the general motion. But you must release the ball for the dribble before your second step. Here, a clear, good example of it, where 7 blue is on the move, ball is being passed to him. Then where the 0 is, clear, when he gains control of the ball and his left foot is circled with the red, his left foot now becomes the pivot. So that's now his 0. He's able to now make a step with the right foot, which is legal. But remembering from the previous slide, he must release the ball before that second step. And here in the example, in 2, the player releases the ball from the hand before that left foot returns to the floor. So hence, left foot gain control, first action, 0. Right foot, second action, 1 step. Release the ball before second step left. Third action, which makes that entire movement legal. If that did not happen, it would have been a travel. All right, now completing a dribble, and basically on your first step. Again, all starts from gaining control, which is the first action or your 0. When you're moving, gain control with 1 foot is either you want to make 1 step with your left, or you come to a complete stop with both feet. Hence now you have completed your dribble. You have to complete your dribble with 1 foot or both feet on the floor. So you have 2 options in the first situation. You can either stop your dribble on 1 foot or both feet. But in the second example, in receiving the ball in motion with both feet on the floor, you can only stop the dribble with 1 foot on the floor, or don't dribble at all. So the first step occurs when 1 foot or both feet touch the floor after gaining control of the ball. So these, in both examples, in the first one, the first step is either with 1 foot or both feet. But in the second example, because you receive the ball with both feet, that first step would be with either foot, left or right, after gaining control of the ball. Now gaining, complete a dribble, 2 step. Again, similar situation. In movement, receive the ball, gain control, 1 foot, first step, second step. and dribble. Both feet on the floor, in motion, one step, two step. But the second step occurs after the first step, when the other foot touches the floor or both feet touch the floor simultaneously. Okay, so this slide now will basically give some sort of clarity to the previous slides, where, as you see, the first action, ball received or ball gaining, player gaining control of the live ball, 1 foot on the floor or airborne. Then his first step, so if he gains control with his right foot on the floor, his first step or his next step should be with his left foot, which now becomes pivot foot. Okay? And in doing that, in the next action, his second step is now his right foot. After that, his second step, he has an option to either pass or shoot. However, he cannot return that other foot to the floor before the ball releases on a pass or for a shot. Gains control of the ball airborne, player lands both feet or with 1 foot. That is his first step. That's also his pivot. Then he makes another step. That's his second step. And it's for him now to either pass or shoot. And again, here's an example. Player blue 7 receives the ball in motion or off the dribble, or he's completing a dribble and he's not going for a layup. So dribble ends, ball is gathered in both hands, left foot is on the floor. That's the 0. Next step would or should be with the right. And in 1, you see second action, 1 step, right foot now is on the floor. Now that first step again becomes his pivot. And the third action is second step, or 2 step, which is now the left foot again. And as you can see, the right foot is off the floor. So it's for the player is to decide whether he's now going to pass or shoot for a field goal. And remember, again, left foot, right foot, left foot, in basically that order, or right foot, left foot, right foot. Once you gather or gain control of that live ball, your next step should be with the opposite foot, which is the first. And if you're to make another step, would be from the other foot, the opposite foot, for it to be legal. If that does not happen, then it's a travel. Again, another example, similar. Player moving to the basket. Now this is on a pass, no dribble. Player receives the ball in motion, gains control with the left foot being stationary, being on the floor. He now makes his first step with his right, which now becomes the pivot. And his 2 step or the third action is now again with the left, which causes that action to be legal. Again, if that does not take place, where it's left, right, left, or right, left, right, if that is not in that sequence, then that player would have traveled. All right, we move on to completion of a dribble or stop on the first step. Again, remembering the symbology from the early slide. The ball by itself represents the player controlling the ball in the air. Now, as it says, if both feet are off the floor and the player lands on both feet simultaneously, the moment one foot is lifted, the other foot becomes a pivot. So basically this, you basically jump for the ball, the ball is passed to you, you jump, you gather the ball, you control the ball in the air, you land both feet simultaneously. Once you lift one of your feet, whether left or right, if you lift your right, your left becomes a pivot. If you lift your left, the right becomes a pivot. Hence, the next step would be with the opposite foot. Or you can try for a field goal or a pass once you have established that. And in the lower one, player gains control with one foot on the floor. Remember, the gray represents foot in the air. You land on both feet. If the right becomes the pivot, then the left, then you either make one step, or sorry, you either jump for a field goal or you pass. So again, if the player who comes to a stop on his first step has both feet on the floor or they touch the floor simultaneously, he may pivot using either foot as his pivot foot. If he then jumps with both feet, no foot may return to the floor before the ball is released from the hand or hands. Now, moving one progression further, where he completes a dribble and he stops on the second step. The first one was where he stopped on the first step, now where he stops on the second step. Again, similar situations for the first action, whether he gains control with one foot on the floor, whether he gains control with the ball in the air, or whether he gains control with both feet on the floor. Now it says, after gaining control of the ball, and that's when he makes his first step. The first step comes after gaining control. So you must gain control first to have a zero. And then your next step, whether it's with both feet or one foot, that now becomes your first step. And that first step becomes your pivot. Then second step, basically both feet or either foot, and he ends his dribble. Once he leaves his feet on a shot for a field goal, the ball must be released from the hand before the player returns to the floor. So if a player jumps off one foot on the first step, he may land with both feet simultaneously for the second step. In this situation, the player may not pivot with either foot. If one or both feet then leave the floor, no foot may return to the floor before the ball is released from the hands. So again, you gain control, make your first step, and your second step, you basically land with both feet simultaneously. And that's on your second step. So now, once you leave your feet on a shot for a goal, you may not return to the floor with any of the foot until a ball is released. So, jump, stop, both feet, And if you jump for a shot, release the ball. If you land with the ball in your hand, travel. So in this one, similar. Gain control of the ball. You make your first step, or you jump, land with both feet. If you do take another step, that's illegal, hence it's travel. So if a player jumps off 1 foot on the first step, which is the green, he may land with both feet simultaneously for the second step, which is the orange or the brown. In this situation, the player may not pivot with either foot because there's no pivot foot, because that's the second step. And if you're going to have a pivot, the pivot is normally on the first step. So pivot on the first step, no pivot on the second step. So in this situation, the player may not pivot with either foot. If 1 foot or both feet then leave the floor, no foot, again, may return to the floor before the ball is released from the hand or the hands.
Mr. Young.
Yes, sir.
So we've got quite a few questions coming in about the Euro step. So I guess I'm asking if those last 2 slides would have explained the Euro step.
Yeah, these last 2 slides somewhat represents what the Euro step is. If I am incorrect, please somebody chime in and clarify. Okay. Consecutively with the same foot, which means, and we will go. Again, player gains control of the ball with 1 foot on the floor, and this is in motion again, in progression, in motion, in moving. Player gains control with 1 foot on the floor, whether left or right. In this scenario, it's the left. That player, his next step or his first step cannot be with the same foot for which he gained control of the ball with. So it shows it here. And it says, a player may not touch the floor consecutively with the same foot or both feet after ending his dribble or gaining control of the ball. So in moving, ball comes to the player, player gains control, left foot is on the floor. His next step should be with the right foot for it to be legal. If his next step is with his left foot and he gained control of the ball with his left foot, that is illegal, then it's a travel. If he gains control of the ball with the right foot, the next step or the second action should, or his one step, should be with the opposite foot, which is the left. If his next step is with the right, once gaining possession of the ball with his right, it's illegal, it's a travel.
We've got a few questions of person asking to explain the Yugo step.
Okay, can I chime in for a second, Mr. Young?
Right ahead.
In watching the question that is in the group, they're asking if the player can, the zero step is the right foot. However, they hop off of the right foot and land on the right foot again. That is a travel. That is definitely a travel. When you take off with your right foot, when you come back down, that's your zero. You come down on your left foot, that's 1. And then if you come down simultaneously with both feet together, that consider as one step. As Mr. Young had up on the screen, when you came down simultaneously, that count as your second step. Good, Mr. Young.
Correct. All right, so consecutively with the same foot, and in the progression here, the first action or zero, basically it's with the right, because the player gains control of the live ball, which is right foot on the floor. Player leaves the floor. Player leaves the floor, returns to the floor with that same right foot. Once the player does that, that is illegal. That is a travel violation. And that is what this slide showed, where in control of a live ball with one foot, player leaves his feet. Next step, if it's with the same foot, travel. If it's with the opposite foot, legal, as shown in this one. Are there any questions?
I think the you-go step was the big one, and I think you've just answered it here with the consistently landing on the same foot. So I think you've answered that question.
Okay.
Could you please mute your mics?
Okay. Now the spin move is next. Now in this example here, this squiggle red line represents a player dribbling to a position on the floor. Now the black with the ball represents when the player gathers the ball. That again becomes the zero. Player then spins with, and the next step should be with the opposite foot. So, that would be the first step. And remember, now, that first step is now the pivot foot. Then the player can either pivot or make the second step, either for a shot for a field goal or make a pass. So in this example, player dribbles, gathers a ball with right foot on the floor, player spins. The next foot that should land on the floor should be the left. That's the one step. That becomes the pivot. And the next step should be with the opposite foot, which should be the left again. Or if the player dribbles, gains control with the left, spins, places the right foot on the floor, that becomes the one step. That foot now is also the pivot. Continues to spin. That next foot is the two step. And that player can either shoot or pass. And that is a legal move. Previously, it was called a travel.
Question.
Yes?
For clarity, With the same Euro step, is it traveling when the leg drags? Similarly done to that in a layup.
I'll have my colleague answer that one.
Anytime, just like the previous question, when Ian answered, when the leg is dragged, is considered, yes, it's considered to be traveling. So that's something we definitely have to keep an eye on. You can't drag your feet after gaining control of the ball.
Any further questions?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So now this example here shows the spin move where green 11 dribbles to a spot on the floor, gathers the ball. Now we see she's dribbling. Now the first step where she controls the ball, her left foot is on the floor. That's now the 0. Player spins, right foot becomes the first step. And the first step is now the pivot foot. Okay? Third step, or this third action, which is now the 2-step, player places the left foot on the floor. That is legal. All right, so let's go through this again. Player dribbles, or is dribbling. Player gains control, which means they gather, they stop the dribble. Now, in this scenario, the left foot becomes the 0. Player spins. Right foot becomes the first step, or now the pivot foot. And the 2-step is with now the opposite leg, which is the left foot. That's the second step. That is legal. If the player makes another step after that second step, that would be a third step, and that would be illegal. Any other question? Any question at all? No questions? Okay. Basically coming to the wrap up. And there's basically no change to when a player falls or lies on the or sits on the floor and gain control. So it says 25-2-2, a player falling, lying, or sit on the floor. It is legal when a player falls and slides on the floor while holding the ball, or while lying or sitting on the floor, gains control of the ball. It is a violation, however, if the player then rolls or attempts to stand up while holding that ball, or while holding the ball. I know someone asked a question previously, can a player sit up? Does that constitute a travel? That's not a travel. As it says, once a player doesn't roll or attempts to stand up while holding the ball, if he does that, it's a violation. Question? No question? Okay, I will stop sharing here. I'll have Ian or Freddie give any remarks that they would like to give, and I'll come back with a part of a video to try and help clarify certain things that we just spoke about. I turn it over to you, Ian or Freddie.
Thank you very much, Noble, for your presentation so far. We must understand the fact that there is indeed a new rule, and it really makes the game a little bit more easier because you have this extra step now. The thing to remind yourself about, 0-0, don't even count it. 0 step is 0, it's nothing, don't count it. All right, as a step. Then you have that first step, second step. And if you have those 3 items, then you would really, in reality, have 3 steps. So those are the things to remember. The next thing is determining that pivot foot. Once you can determine that pivot foot, referee be able to really make the call for traveling or not. And so it's not easy because the feet, it moves very quickly, and it isn't a natural look for the referee to be looking at the foot. Generally, the natural look for a referee is at the waistline up to the chin, generally. And so these are things the referees will have to train themselves when they get in the game, particularly when they're using these different 3-person rotation, 2-person rotation, and their responsibility to watch the play. So it was just a couple of points I wanted to bring across with respect to refereeing. I guess you could continue now.
All right, question. A player who receives a ball with his right leg and moves his left leg to take a shot, and after that dribbles with the same foot, is it traveling? Question is, a player who receives a ball with his right leg and moves his left leg to take a shot after that dribble with the same foot, is it dribbling? Is it traveling?
Repeat that question again.
Let me see if I get it clearly. Player receives or gathers the ball or controls the live ball with the right foot being the 0. Or the right foot on the floor.
Correct.
Okay. Then they take the first step or the 1 step, which is with the left foot. That's correct?
That's so far it's going.
So the question is, can they take a shot from that same left leg?
So can he move his left leg? So that same left leg, can he then move that same left leg after the dribble?
Remember, that first step, after that initial controlling of the ball, that first step becomes your pivot. So if you move your pivot, that basically constitutes what? Travel or violation. Does that answer the question?
Max Galaxy
Yes.
has a question.
No, I don't have a question. The answer to what you ask, that would be a travel violation because he cannot move that same left leg again.
Simultaneous leg.
Yes.
Proceed. Are there any more questions?
Yes, yeah, I think there's one more. Hold on.
Is that the same link?
Optimize it before you go in.
Mr. Young, is that the same link that we were showing this afternoon?
Uncle should have told me.
Yes, sir. Yes. Can you share your screen now? You cannot share your screen.
No, I can't share my screen, but we started at 11:54. 11:54 on the timeline. That's where we started it from.
One second. You can go ahead and let me get this thing come up quickly.
Okay. Well, the video that Mr. Young is putting together is a video of various clips. Some of the clips that will be shown will be repeat of situation that Mr. Young explained, just like this. We'll have a video on that. So the clips are just to be looked at. At the end, it will tell us which clips were legal moves, and which clips is traveling moves. It's about approximately six clips.
Got a question, Mr. Kite. Okay, question here. If a player is allowed 2 steps after he picks up his dribble, does the same apply for taking 2 steps backward? Again, the question is, if a player is allowed 2 steps after he picks up his dribble, does the same apply for taking 2 steps backward?
We'll have to email the referee director of FIBA for that particular answer.
I guess this is where the James Harden situation comes into play.
Right.
The step back. From what I understand, you can take 2 steps back, that to the side, left or right, and backwards or forward. If that is not correct, then someone will clarify. But from what in studying it and in looking at videos where it says that now becomes legal.
How is that?
disadvantaged situation.
All right. In those clips, were those clips clear where a person were able to see exactly what we went through and how they are applied to what it is we've been going through these last 2 days?
Yes, sir. It was clear, and we do understand it.
And just, I would like to.
Very clear on my end.
I'd like to just, the last question that was asked about this player taking steps backwards. The rules say a player who receives the ball while he's progressing or upon completion of a dribble can take 2 steps and come into a stop. Then passes or shoots the ball. So it says takes 2 steps. It does not state the direction of the steps.
Correct.
So we got it with 2. If we got it the ball, he can take 2 steps back. That's what you said?
The rule says take 2 steps. Did not say 2 steps forward.
Please let us not get confused with the NBA style of play versus the FIBA style of play.
Okay. All right, Ian. I think everybody is expressing their opinion on what exactly that was learned. So that's good. Okay.
Okay, so we've come to the end of our night.
Not yet, not yet, not yet. I just have to wrap up everything.
Okay, great.
Sorry?
Go right ahead. Mm-hmm.
So, in wrapping up, we basically went through the varying situations and scenarios for traveling. We went through scenarios which were, especially now with the change in the rule, where we've added an extra step, which we are now saying, well, basically the 0 step. So it's for all of us, players, referees, coaches, table officials. We all do need to understand that players have an extra step that they can make once it is legal in making it. And we went through the varying scenarios or situations, player from stationary position, player in a progression situation or action, and the varying scenarios and where that player and the steps that they make are either legal or illegal. Once the steps are legal, then it's a legal play. If it's illegal, then it's a travel violation. All right. I will leave us with one short, small video before we exit.
Assault to Allen as the official and that tells you something different. That happens right in the past. The ref takes the ball to goes Derek Richardson. Go right though. Make the call. Goes Derek Richardson. Which way is it? Which way is it? On the Lakers. On the Lakers. Eric Lewis. Joey Crawford. For everyone who says I never put refs in Shaqtin, you're welcome. Oh, it looks like that. This time just got knocked out. This was always get banged up. And Anderson took it away. Jason in trouble. We'll see this
I just wanted to leave that with us as we leave, because yes, there are times when us referees, yes, we are part of the game, but sometimes situations do happen to us which is unexpected. But sometimes you just have to see the lighter side to it. I know a few of our friends, I would leave anonymous, at one tournament our referee got swallowed by the court, and they actually had a serious fall, but at least we were able to bring the game to a happy end at that time, and the referee was not injured. But yeah, sometimes these things do happen to us, and it's not uncommon, but it's how we move on from it. But I'd like to thank everyone for their attention and their questions this evening, and we do look forward to seeing you or having you at our other sessions to come. Thank you very much, and Godspeed.
That brings us to the forecast for tomorrow. We have the unsportsmanlike foul tomorrow. We good?
Okay.
You have the unsportsmanlike foul tomorrow, and Mr. Roberto Vasquez from Puerto Rico and Miss Jennifer Hackett from Barbados will be the presenters tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thanks.